Hello, BookTube. We're continuing my library tour, and we've been in the darkest depths of Mordor, this recessed hutch in the wall. And I've been complaining that, this recessed hutch is just a magnet for piles and piles of books, but we haven't actually seen that yet. The top shelf, although overcrowded with mass market paperbacks, was still mass market paperbacks sitting on a shelf. And the middle shelf is just a shelf. It's just a bookshelf. You saw, we were pulling down books and looking at them. Now, however, now we get to the darkest depths of Mordor. Now, we had the Fellowship wandering their way through Moria, but as Gandalf reveals when he comes back in the Two Towers, there are lower depths than even the places where the orcs or the Balrog lived. There are places far, far lower than that. That's where we are now. Because this bottom space, it isn't a shelf. It used to be a shelf, but the shelf cracked. This bottom space is huge, and it is completely full of books, and there's no order. And there's no structural sense either. I don't know how we're going to do this. I think what I'm going to try to do is just pile the books on the floor rather than try and put them back. I can't put them back because they're resting on top of each other. So I can't put them back if we're going to look at any of them. So we're going to do the first pile, or try to, today, and then we will move on from there. And I will make a mess in order to fix a mess. That's what I will do. So, what is the first one? I have no idea. Okay, the first one is Jughead, The Hunger, Volume 3. This is the third volume in a series in which Jughead from Archie Comics is a werewolf. He's a good werewolf. He's a good werewolf, somehow manages to maintain his love of hamburgers. I kind of like this. This is from... it's not Marvel or DC. It's Archie Comics did just relaunch this on their own, and they decided to have some fun with it and attracted some fairly good talent. I have enjoyed these masks. I would never, ever in a million years buy these graphic novel collections on my own, but I have enjoyed every one that's been sent to me. So, okay, all right. This next one really needs to be reinforced, or the dust jacket is going to fall apart. This is Ruffles and Flourishes by Liz Carpenter. There is our author. She was for a long time the press secretary for Lady Bird Johnson, and when she got out of office, she wrote a White House memoir, and I love White House memoirs. Sorry, I love pre-2016 White House memoirs, and this one is tons of fun. A totally different world that I put here. It was. This is the second time I think that we're seeing it on this library tour. It was once upon a time over on the biography, or the biography shelf, but this isn't actually a biography. It's just a U.S. presidential book. It belongs somewhere else, somewhere adjacent, but not in biographies. Okay, these next two are Library of America, or New York Review of Books classics of Life and Fate and Stalingrad by Vasily Grossman. Two lovely things that they put out. I'm not always the biggest fan of their editorial choices. The people who pick the vast number of books that they reprint, the people who are in charge of that picking, obviously have completely different reading tastes than mine. Because the number of times where we get something where we completely agree is very rare. But this is one of those times. Okay, this is another one of the books that was on the biography shelf and is now... elsewhere, because I need to figure out somewhere else to put it. This is A World Transformed by George Bush and Brent Scowcroft. And this is an account of Bush's term in office, which saw the world change in a lot of ways, and it benefits by having Scowcroft involved. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy this book, but it is not, strictly speaking, a presidential biography or biography of any kind. So it belongs somewhere else, probably in history. Probably what I need to do. We're going to get to history. If we ever get through this, I don't know what this is. If we ever get through this, then the next stop is history. And I should probably go through history and clear out space to make sure that books like this and Ruffles and Flourishes have a place there. I should make a shelf of presidential adjacent books. Studies by diplomats during presidential administrations and stuff like that. But right now, sort of floats in between biography and history. So right now it's here. It's here in this section because this is where I chuck things. This is where I have chucked things if I don't know what to do with them. Okay, this is by Michael Wentworth. This is Look Again. This is a collection of essays on the artwork in the collection of the Boston Athenaeum, a very old private library here in Boston that has, you have to see it to believe it. You can see pictures of it, you can hear it described, but it's only when you've walked through the doors and walked around in the Athenaeum that you see what an amazing place it is, what an exaggeratedly Hollywood-level amazing place it is. And this is a collection of essays about the various pieces of artwork that hang on the walls without any glass protection of any kind, the statues that adorn the hallways of the Athenaeum. This is a collection of essays about that artwork. What fun. Okay, then we have this is a big graphic novel omnibus of the Ultimates, which was a it's a bit it's a bit convoluted, but the Marvel Comics did an Ultimate line. Marvel Comics is the publisher of Spider-Man and the X-Men and whatnot, and they decided at one point to redo their continuity separate from the main comics. They launched an Ultimates universe in which the writers and artists got to reinterpret basic characters and retell their origins. Only unlike the previous story, the previous attempt they'd done to do that, which was Heroes Reborn, this time it wasn't that the Ultimates universe was taking over. It wasn't that it was going to be the canonical universe anymore. It was just going to be adjacent to it. A different telling of that. An actually inspired idea. And it led to some very interesting comics. There was an Ultimate Spider-Man that was hugely popular. And the Ultimates was the Ultimate Universe version of the Avengers. This was written by Mark Millar and drawn by Brian Hitch back when both of those people could be relied upon to finish what they start, could be edited, could be expected to turn in page counts on time and whatnot. In the tiny, tiny, tiny comics world, the minute you become a celebrity in that tiny, tiny world, you abandon work ethic. So things like this don't exist anymore. But it's hard. It's hard to describe. I was buying the Ultimates as they were coming out, issue by issue, and I was enjoying them very much. There are some really genuine dramatic beats in these stories, and they are very different from the Avengers, of course. I mean, there's surface similarities, but they are very different. And there are some moments in here, some dramatic moments that I still love. I still look back on them and love them. I do go back to this volume. I don't know. I guess my ambivalent tone is coming from the fact that I think the long-term after effects of comics like the Ultimates, in which characters swear a blue streak, in which there are teams where no members like each other, in which there are teams where two of the heroes have a sexual relationship that is mainly motivated by anger and violence on both sides. How no one's out for anything good, and the biggest thug, the biggest brute and bully, the biggest cynic, the biggest person who believes in might over right is Captain America himself. So, it was kind of fun and interesting as an Ultimates offshoot sort of what-if branch of Marvel Comics to read these things, but they had an enormous after effect. They're still having it. And I don't know that I can get behind that. Okay. All right, this is the deluxe hardcover reprint of Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow by Alan Moore and Kurt Swan. This is a redone cover it was a 2-issue series. It was a 2-issue comic book series. It wasn't a graphic, just a square-bound comic books. And the second issue, the concluding issue of the story, had a version of this cover. I don't know if this collection has the original cover. It'd be a shame if it didn't. But let's see. Let's just quickly see. Does it? That's what I want to know. Does the reprint have the original cover? No, it does not. Okay. Oh, yes, it does. Yes, it does. You see? That is the original cover by Kurt Swan, in which Superman is flying away from the Daily Planet, and a whole bunch of people are saying goodbye to him. And this is the new cover. And you notice right away, some of you will notice right away, that there are some key differences, right? You can see them all over the place. There are some key differences in those covers. Captain Marvel, for instance. The Martian Manhunter, for instance. There's a guy in a suit, right here, waving goodbye. That's Julius Schwartz, longtime Superman editor who helped to make Superman what he is. But all the rest of these people in suits are not there anymore. Kurt Swan is not there anymore. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster are not there anymore. But this story took place in a pivotal moment for Superman. This was when DC Comics had greenlit the idea to revamp Superman completely and just handed him over to the fan favorite artist and writer John Byrne, under the assumption that Superman had too much continuity, that there was too much tradition, too much baggage, as DC Suits put it at the time, that was putting off new fans. They wouldn't want stories that were grown in such a thick soil. They'd want something new, a new, fresh start. And Alan Moore wrote this story, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, that is an absolute orgiastic celebration of Superman's long history. Specifically, I think, in Alan Moore's contrary way, to show that it could be done. That you don't need to remake this character at all. You don't need to simplify his continuity whatsoever. You can just if you tell really fantastic stories, then you're fine. You'll be fine. You'll, in fact, write a classic. And that's what this is. This is a change comes over Superman's typical villains, the prankster, the toy man, Lex Luthor, Brainiac, that makes them suddenly not just a nuisance, but murderous. And that has a ripple effect that eventually ends up with Superman and all of his friends bunkered in the Fortress of Solitude, awaiting the worst, before Superman has to disappear. And it's a terrific story, just terrific. And this volume has other things as well. It has, like for instance, what's his name, who did Swamp Thing? Alan Moore did a Swamp Thing story in which Superman guest stars, and that was fairly interesting, a little poorly drawn. And this think also ends with this ends with one of the greatest single comic book issues ever done. This is also by Alan Moore. Will I have the cover? Yes. It's For the Man Who Has Everything. It was a Superman annual. Alan Moore wrote it. Dave Gibbons drew it, and it's incredible. It's been adapted to the network cartoon. It's on everybody's top list of favorite Superman stories of all time. It's an amazing story. I'm very glad to have it in a hardcover edition. So that is Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. Oh my. Okay, all right. These next two are more Ultimates. This is Ultimates Volume 2, which is still drawn by Brian Hitch and still written by Mark Millar. The aspects that I mentioned get worse here. There's an evil version of these Avengers. That's a pretty thin line. I was reading these issues as they were coming out, and I was thinking, okay, well, these Muslim-led, Soviet-backed evil Avengers are crude and rude, and they value the rule of force over law, and they're prone to making sexist or racist or jokes, and and so are the original Ultimates. The two teams are virtually identical. You can't do a storyline in which you have the evil versions of your heroes if you've already made your heroes fairly evil. But this is a big story. It's a great big epic story about that ultimately ends up being about the Norse god Loki waging war on Earth, on Earth's reality. And the story concludes with something incredible that I thought, I was blown away when it was done in a monthly comic book. And for some reason, I didn't think that Marvel would actually reproduce it in the graphic novel, and they do. And that is a 6-page spread in the middle of the comic. Just goes on and on and on. 6 pages. Page after page after page of the Avengers fighting the forces of evil. And that was in the monthly comic book, which I have here somewhere. I couldn't bring it. I couldn't bring myself to get rid of the monthly comic because it had this thing which I'd never seen before. I'd never seen anyone do something that ambitious. So I kept these because I do go back to them from time to time. Every once in a while, they're like with the first run of Ultimates, there were moments that I liked. Okay, all right, these don't belong here. These are individual comic books. This is a True Believers issue of Conan the Barbarian, and there's Khazar and his pet Zabu, the saber-toothed tiger. And this was Marvel Comics did a series of $1 reprints of True Believer issues of previous issues of characters when they were wanting to launch or back some new project. In this case, Marvel reacquiring the rights to Robert E. Howard's Conan. So they came out with these $1 issues, and I got this one because, well, I love the Neil Adams cover. I didn't really, well, for $1, I really didn't need more motivation than that. But it turns out that everything in here is in the big omnibus volume that I got just recently. So I don't need this anymore. And this is Conan the Barbarian number 2. When Marvel relaunched these, they just relaunched. I was buying them, and I was really enjoying them. This is by Jason Aaron is the writer, and Mahmoud Asrar is the artist. And like all the other Marvel Conan things, it has a mistake. No O Prince, O-H, instead of capital O, singular, no H. At the time, I thought that was a mistake. Now I know that it's willful on the part of Marvel Comics editors. They have now, Marvel Comics editors at all levels have now had it pointed out to them that is just objectively wrong. It's just a mistake. And they're behind it. They're okay with it. They would rather do that than listen to even the smallest thing from their fans. They want adulation from their fans, and otherwise no. If you were to look carefully through this old 1960s, 70s Conan, you would find the same quotation that opens all Conan adventures, no, O Prince, spelled correctly. So Marvel has it in their own archives. They know perfectly well they're doing it wrong, and they don't care. Which is, the more I think about that, the more it bothers me, so I try not to think about it. Okay, this is a Thor graphic novel. This is Walter Simonson. This is volume 2 of his run on Thor. He had a previous run, but this is the famous one, the epic run that Walter Simonson had as writer and artist on Thor, that any Thor fan will tell you was one of the greatest runs of all time on the character. And this is the highlight of that run. It originally came out as a gigantic hardcover omnibus covering the whole of the Simonson run. And I had that omnibus. I sent it to somebody. It can't have been one of you, because I had it before I had this channel. But then I thought, well, just go online and get a cheap remainder of that hardcover omnibus. And then I thought, no. I love the Simonson run. I was eagerly buying them in the comic shops when they were coming out as single issues. But the only part of that run that I really want to keep is this run, the run that's collected in this story, in this volume, about the flame god Surtur and his legions of doom. And this storyline climaxes with the family of Odin fighting against Surtur, the flame demon. So there's Odin, and there's Loki, and there's Thor. All finally united against a foe that wants to kill them all. And it's it's a wonderful moment. I wonder if I can flip right to it. There's a wonderful moment where the three characters are launching themselves into battle, and they give their respective rallying cries. Yes. Odin says, for Asgard. Thor says, for Midgard, which is Earth. And Loki says, for myself. And wonderfully done. All of it recolored, remastered. So I'm glad I have this volume. Okay, this next one is not a graphic novel. This is a How and Why Wonder Book of birds. This is an old-style thing. There were a whole bunch of these, probably 3 dozen of them. These old... you got black and white illustrations and also the occasional color illustration in here. This is just a children's guide to birds of North America, that I just happened to find. I think I found this at the Brattle. And I had it once upon a time, ages and ages ago. When did this come out? I don't even want to know, do I? 1960. And I think these things are charming. The old copy of this that I have, I often brought to a group of kids to read it to them and show it to them. So it was pretty battered, and I think it's long gone. I think that's why I probably got this, just for sentimentality's sake. Okay, another graphic novel. This is a hardcover collection of Dark Avengers by Brian Michael Bendis and Mike Deodato. Terrific artwork by Mike Deodato. Just amazing. Where Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, through a very convoluted storyline, takes over the Avengers and is a hero in the eyes of the public, and staffs the Avengers with lunatics and psychotics and criminals, and wants to rehab their image. And I was fascinated by this storyline, just fascinated by it. It was never going to last for long. It wasn't the new normal, so I ate it up. I was helped a lot by Mike Diedo's artwork, which is amazing. But it was fascinating for me to see the various loyalties. Yes, the team, this new Dark Avengers team, has mostly losers and criminals on it, but there are a couple of X Factors on there. There are a couple of people who might like a chance at renovating their career. There's the Greek god of war, Ares, who is, of course, above such concerns and just honestly believes in Norman Osborn's vision. And most interesting of all is Norman Osborn himself, who fluctuates in the course of these adventures between being just a scheming villain who's playing fourth-dimensional chess with everybody and actually wanting to be a hero at some point or another. I thought it was just fascinating the way it was done. So when I saw the hardcover collecting the whole run, I grabbed it. Okay, more hardcover graphic novels of old comic books. In this case, 2 Marvel Masterworks volumes of the Avengers. Classic runs on the Avengers. I don't need any impulse to... No, I don't need any motivation to buy these old things. These are just great. These storylines are just great. These are when, a comic book was 25 cents and there wasn't any Marvel Cinematic Universe. There was no YouTube. There was no internet. There was no alternative. If you were and science fiction movies were usually pretty bad. So if you wanted food for your imagination like this, you had to go to comic books for it. At least I did. And I did. Very eagerly I did. The Avengers came out once a month. There were no spin-offs, no buy Avengers, no anything like that. And I went every month and got the Avengers, Fantastic Four, Thor, Conan, Justice League, Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman. I loved it. And so, the audience, the core audience for these kinds of comics has gotten older. Comic books are in decline because they are not attracting a younger audience, and these things are the result of that, because Marvel and DC both realize, okay, the fans who are now older will buy this. They have a little disposable income. They're not working on their allowances anymore, so I just eat these things up as they come out. Okay, this is another comic book. This is the Childrens Crusade, a miniseries starring the Young Avengers, in their quest to find the Scarlet Witch, who they think is the mother of 2 of their members. Turns out she's in Latveria, just about to get married to Dr. Doom. It was just never a good thing to do. No, never a good thing to do. He can be charming. But, no matter who you are, you don't ever want to marry a supervillain. Whether you're Aunt May thinking about marrying Dr. Octopus, or whether you're Susan Richards, maybe toying with the idea of marrying the Submariner, or whether you're Wanda Maximoff, thinking maybe Victor can be reclaimed. It's better not to think that way. But it's great. I got it because it's just incredible artwork. Just look at that Jim Chung artwork. That is just amazing. Okay, this next one is more comic books. This is a Batman box set. This is 3 allegedly iconic Batman storylines. There's Hush by Jim Lee, Court of Owls by Oliver Coipel, and Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. And of the 3 of those, I think Dark Knight Returns towers over the other 2, but they are still interesting to read, although obviously not interesting enough for me to get them unburied from this closet. Okay, next 3, more comic books. This is more Archie. This is more Archie comics. Obviously spurred by the success of the TV show Riverdale. But this is more Archie comics. They send them to me, and I enjoy them very much. They are very enjoyable. I don't know that I would ever buy them. I would certainly never buy an individual issue. These things have to be made from individual issues. I would never do anything like that. But if you yourself are looking for some fun graphic novels that maybe aren't the heavy-handed Sturm und Drang of superheroes, you could go to your library and get one of these. I'm sure that's why these things exist. I'm sure they exist for libraries. I bet you'd be entertained. I bet you would be. A couple of these are written by Mark Waid. For instance, this one is written by Mark Waid, who is a legend in comic books. Let's see here. Okay, this next one is Cosmic Odyssey, an old graphic novel by Jim Starlin and Mike Mignola, before both of them went on to bigger and better things. Just a big cosmic storyline involving a handful of DC superheroes. Not all of whom are Justice League members, just a random assortment. I mainly got this because it was really a lot of fun to see a lot of these characters drawn by Mike Mignola. A lot of them are not his type of character at all to draw. Darkseid, the villain, might be. Batman certainly is, but a lot of them aren't. And so that was fun. That was fun to watch him do that. Another comic book. This is Astro City Confession, which the main storyline is about the Confessor and the Altar Boy. It's the Astro City's version of Batman and Robin. But the main reason that I kept this volume, I've had all the Astro City volumes at one point or another, but the main reason that I kept this volume is for the backup story. There's a backup story called The Nearness of You that is incredible. Just incredible. Those of you who have read it will know what I mean. It's too much too involved to describe, but it's an incredible thing. The Astro City went on forever and ever for 10 years, many, many graphic novels, many, many issues. You've seen it on this channel before. And all of them are really reliably good, very intelligent take on superheroes. But The Nearness of You is the only thing I read in Astro City is in its entire run that was truly brilliant. And so I kept this volume, even though I didn't keep any others. Okay, this next one is Captain America. This is, I think, Mark Waid. Who is this? Oh, wow. Okay. Ron Garney did the artwork. Well, I know who did the inkers, the letterers, the editor-in-chief. Wow. No writers listed. Okay, let's see if we... since I hate that sort of thing, since that is the sort of bargain basement incompetence that tends to describe Marvel Comics these days, do we have any internal attribution whatsoever? No, we do not. Okay, well, all right. Then this was not written by anyone. It was drawn by Ron Garney. And this is just a collection of Captain America adventures that are terrific. I mainly got these for Ron Garney artwork. I'm a big fan. I also enjoyed the writing, which is not done by anyone. These issues are not written by anyone. But I don't need this volume anymore because, as you saw on this channel, I got a big omnibus collecting the entire Ron Garney Captain America. Now, that omnibus said that a lot of those issues were written by Mark Waid, but I'm guessing this isn't because Marvel didn't put his name on it. But I have that whole omnibus now, so I don't need this individual thing. Oh my. Okay, well, when we're talking about comic book collections, this is a pretty old one. This is Bring On the Bad Guys by Stan Lee. This was $6.95 when it came out. This is Stan Lee did a sort of a comic book style industry autobiography called The Origins of Marvel Comics, and it was a surprise hit. Comic book fans really enjoyed that book, in which Lee tells the origin stories. Basically, he shows them to you. He introduces comic book reprints, but his textual segments describing the backstage stuff going on about the creation of these characters was the selling point of the book. And so he did a sequel called Son of the Origins of Marvel Comics. And then that was successful, so he did a third book, Bring On the Bad Guys. And there was a fourth book about the women in Marvel Comics. And all of them have these gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous John Romita Sr. covers. Just unbelievable. Origins of Marvel Comics, the original, has an amazing cover of the characters popping out of an old manual typewriter. And the Son of Origins is also incredible. Just John Romita Sr. is great, and so I kept this. I wish that I had kept Origins of Marvel Comics and Son of Origins. I had all four of them, and this is the only one I kept. And I wish I kept them all, because I would definitely go back to them a lot more than I would to later reprints. Okay, we're almost done here. We're almost done. This is Make Way for Nancy. This is Nancy shown a life in public art. And naturally, that's her public statues of the Make Way for Ducklings from the great book, the children's book. The ducklings adorn the gardens in the public garden here in Boston, and this is all about the artist just making public art. Obviously, doesn't belong here. It obviously belongs somewhere else. And then the last book. Oh no, there are two. The first one is The Plot. By Will Eisner, the great Will Eisner, who's the creator of The Spirit, the sort of a haphazard masked Avenger type character. But Will Eisner also spent his whole career doing graphic novel illustrations of just stories, of things that didn't involve the Spirit or superheroes in any way. And this is about the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, and is one of my favorite of his books. Who was this? Who did the great job of collecting these? W.W. Norton. I should have known. they did the service to everyone of collecting these things. So a good library might have a few of these. And this, it's amazing what Eisner could do. He was a genius, far more than just for his creation of the Spirit. I'm glad I have this, although it doesn't belong here. And then the last thing we have here is a DC Comics Presents reprint of Superman's Secret Identity by Kurt Busiek and Stuart Immonen. And this is a beautifully drawn, look at that, just beautiful. This is a beautifully drawn story in which a kid in our world, in the normal world where there are no superheroes, his name is Clark Kent. And everybody makes fun of him for that because there are no superheroes, but there are superhero comic books. And his name is Clark Kent, but he doesn't have any superpowers, of course. And his friends make fun of him and say, when are you going to reveal your secret identity? And this whole story, Secret Identity, is about what would happen if that Clark Kent did get superpowers. Just woke up one night in a camping trip and was floating in air. What would happen if that happened? And it's great. Just great. And I don't need this. I got this because it came out as a reprint. I was going to comic shops regularly at the time, so I just bought it. But I have the graphic novel collection of these, so I don't need this spin-off thing. And there you go. That is the first stack of Mordor, of the darkest depths of Mordor. So I'm going to put these on the floor and get them a little bit out of the way and just clear off space for the next stack. And we will do that tomorrow. God help us all. I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.